Hi, this is Siofra Bradigan, and this is Siofra's Magic Alcove. So I'm going to talk about will. We'll see. We're going to try this again. I'm having a hard time getting my teeth in the subject because it's kind of all over the place in my head. So there's a lot of things we use the word will for. There's your free will, your true will, your willpower, the force of will, you know, uh, but just because we use the same word for all those things doesn't mean that they actually have the same weight or definition. Free will, on its face, means that you're allowed to do whatever you want, which sort of goes against the idea of fate and destiny and predetermination and that kind of thing, except for the fact that if you are following your true nature, then it's easy, or should be easy, to predict where you'll end up when you'll end up there, because your nature leads you in certain directions and then you are where you are. So that's kind of like a one of those things. And certainly Barton has a good example of people thinking that they have free will to determine their own fate, when in fact, if they're unaware of their own influences and so forth, and not being conscious about what they're doing and where they're going and how they're doing it, they're going to end up in the same place at the same time, even when someone warns them, like he did with that gentleman, telling him if he wanted to prove he had free will to not be at the corner of whatever at midnight, because if he was there he would die, and then he saved him to prove his point. So it sort of highlights that whole notion that free will is not as easy to attain as just the idea of being able to make up your own mind and making your own decisions, because we're so influenced by our environment, how we're raised, everything around us, everything we've experienced, and then our true nature, whatever that happens to be, that we come in to the world with, and figuring out what that is and so forth, and what it means, and if we like who we are, if we want to change who we are, all that stuff kind of works together to give us the notion of making our own decisions and choices when we maybe not. Maybe we're not making our own choices and so forth. Just kind of a discomforting thought. We don't like the idea that we don't have free will in that sense. And certainly all the literature really makes a big deal out of having free will. You have to choose this for yourself, otherwise it won't work, or what have you. Um, and I think that there is definitely a level of that. Like when it comes to this kind of a path in particular, it's like it's not a path that's necessarily easy to walk. It requires focus, concentration, dedication, practice, courage, willingness to face oneself, and all of the things that that implies. Um, and that's one of the reasons why, as a rule, we are generally against the concept of proselytizing, because we don't want to sway someone to taking up this path if it is not something that they're ready for or willing to experience. Um, so, and certainly when it comes to the magic that we do, spell work and that kind of thing, uh, one of the um, one of the concepts that I use to determine whether something's a good idea or not is whether I think that I am trying to affect someone's free will, or trying to force them to do something that they might not willingly or consciously choose. For example, love magic, trying to get someone to fall in love with you, influencing people in such a way that they do whatever you want. Every cult leader ever is experienced with that. notion and is not afraid to use it, bending someone to your will. That's the whole idea of that. And it also has a lot to do with power over, power under kind of structures when you're using it in that regard. And one of the things that I want to do is encourage the power with model, where there isn't like this hierarchy where somebody is above you and controls what you do and you have to do what they say whether you understand it or agree with it or not. I personally think that a conscious choice to do something is going to be a much better approach in any event, because then you're learning and you're taking full responsibility for yourself and kind of guiding your own actions instead of having them guided by someone else. One of the reasons why I try to be not too specific about certain things is because of that. I want people to think for themselves. I want people to ask their own questions. I want people to follow or leave the path as they see fit. If they don't feel ready, if it's not the right thing for them. And I don't think that that should say something about their worth as a human being. It's just a matter of where we are in our development, where we happen to be at the time, and what different approaches might work. There are a lot of people who like to be told what to do, otherwise we wouldn't have religion. And, you know, if that's what keeps people in line and keeps them from running around and harming each other, then okay, I'm fine with that too. You know, it's I had somebody once years ago when I talked about my ideal society where everybody would be an individual and be themselves, and he completely freaked out all over me. He said that I was looking for clones or something, and I'm like, what? I don't understand what you're talking about. Because if everybody's being themselves and an individual, then by definition they are not going to be like anybody else. So I couldn't comprehend where his anxiety was coming from, except for maybe the idea that if you have to actually be a true individual, then there's no one to blame when you do something stupid or, you know, ill-advised or make a mistake or whatever. Fail yourself, I guess. So willpower, of course, is that focused, forceful kind of intention to a specific goal or outcome, and putting everything in that one direction, where you don't have a part of yourself that thinks, yeah, I don't know if this is a good idea, or yeah, I don't know if this is going to work, or whatever. That force of will, that kind of will, can sway people on the spot in an immediate situation. And certainly I have utilized that in dangerous situations where I'm trying to extricate myself from what I consider something that's going to be harming me, and forcing my will along in that direction where I feel something is right, it needs to be done this way, without really realizing it, I think. I mean, when I look back at the society that I'm in and some of the things that are still ongoing in our society, I am astonished that I was able to accomplish things that apparently weren't supposed to be able to be accomplished just by the force of my personality and my insistence that this needs to happen. Like when I managed to have my tubes tied without my husband's written consent in 1978. But, you know, that's just one example. There have been numerous examples where I'm like, I'm sorry, this is how it needs to happen. And then, bam, that's what happens. So more often than not, that tends to work for me. But I'm not sure if it's because I'm so convinced that this is the right thing to do that it kind of bulldozes through people's anxieties or expectations or concerns or whatever, and it's just like, no, this is it. This needs to happen. This is what's going to happen, and you will do this. But I don't feel like I was like trying to force people to do something that shouldn't be done. So I don't know. I mean, being alive is interesting because you have to try and look at all this stuff and figure it out and comprehend it. And then at some point you have to throw it all out and say it doesn't matter because, it was what it was and it is what it is and it will be what it will be, and let's see what happens here. But I know that I'm not the only one who thinks about these things and the potential ethics of making people do what you want. Certainly, the opening of the throat chakra is a spirit power. It is, when it's fully awakened, it can sway people to your point of view. And we know the negative potential for that with cult leaders, world leaders like Hitler, as a prime example of using the power of oratory to pull people with him to do something that, if left to their own devices, they may never have thought of, and certainly may never have done. But, there's always that personal responsibility for not falling under the sway of that kind of thing. And I know that I have that potential in certain circumstances to, just make a statement. This is a statement of reality, and this is what reality is. And there is no room for questioning or argument. Um, and everyone within hearing distance will comply. So I feel like it's a responsibility that I have not to do that, except in extreme circumstances when I feel, like I said, my life or my well-being is on the line. So the will to survive and continue is a pretty powerful thing. It's one of the things that keeps us moving, even with those of us who have some kind of a medical issue, disability, some kind of a something that makes us stand out, not in a good way, to society at large. Um, and I think that the will to survive is part of willpower. It's like the thing that keeps you from dying when you're not ready to. It's the thing that people are trying to encourage you to have if you're in a coma or on the brink of death or going through a crisis emotionally or physically. Um, and that having that willpower, that force inside of you to not back down from whatever it is that's the challenge that you're facing, and the desire to overcome it or power through it or what have you, is what that's about. But true will is a little bit different. True will is like your soul's purpose, maybe would be one way to describe it. It's like that individual spark of thing that is you, that is unique from any other person that's out there, and what is so true to your nature that there's nowhere left for anything else. I think if you're following your true will, it should be easy, which is sort of ironic because mostly everything else isn't. It's it seems that especially in the beginning when you're trying to get things done, there's a lot of frustration and sometimes anger and anxiety and questioning and confusion and so forth as to whether or not this is the right thing to do or the right way to go, or but if you can get through all of those layers of things that have been put upon you and that you've put upon yourself and get down to a core of who you are, of your true nature, then true will comes into play. And when it happens, it's just like, well, this is obviously the right place to be, the right thing to do, the right thing to say. And I think that when you can get to that state that the universe assists you, I mean, we're looking for signs from the universe, a lot of us, looking for symbols to try and explain things, to understand the nature of the reality we are in. Uh, and even though each one of us is existing in a completely different reality because we're all the center of our own universe, there are some things that we can do collectively that are like larger um, truths, maybe. But to get there, like forming your own opinion, how difficult is that? Really, in genuine reality, how difficult is it to have a genuine individual opinion? Do we? Can we? Is that achievable? We're influenced by everyone else's thoughts and ideas. We're influenced by what we read, what we watch, what we see, who we're with, what experiences we have in life around us. And yet, in all of that, somehow we still have to come up with who are we in amongst all of this stuff and what is our particular opinion, which I think can be very challenging and very difficult. One thing that happened that sort of helped me out with that, I think, there was this old guy that was in our house. Don't remember his name. He was doing like a little mini class and was asking me questions about things. And at the time, I wasn't really sure what my opinions were about things. So when he asked a question, I would think about the different people I had read who had an opinion on that. And I would say, well, so and so says this, and this other person says that. And he says, well, I'm not interested in what they said or what they think. I'm interested in what you think, which sort of refocused my brain. It's like you never know when small moments like that can have a huge impact on someone else and their whole reality and their future and everything else. It's pretty amazing, actually, that a single statement from somebody can shift your reality completely and make you look at things from a different point of view. And I think that that definitely happened for me because I had not thought about that it wasn't just regurgitating other people's opinions about things, but it was also supposed to be me integrating those opinions and then looking at them with my own experiences and then deciding what was real for me and what did I really think. So when you're first starting out, I think it's hard to have your own opinions because you don't know enough, really. People who are very opinionated when it comes to magic in particular. Generally are insecure with the vastness of the unknowable nature of the universe and are trying to define it well enough that they don't have any more questions. I don't know why it is that people get uncomfortable when they question reality. It makes us squirm inside somehow. So, to form your own opinion, you have to, an actual opinion. There's a difference between having a real opinion and being opinionated. And, I have found that people who are completely and totally certain of everything that they know generally don't know much because they haven't gotten to the point in their development yet to realize that they may know a little bit, but there's a whole bunch of stuff out there that they have no idea about. And if you're too opinionated, too focused in that, then you end up not learning anything else. And so, there goes the game, as it were. But, I mean, as humans, we're judgmental, we're critical, we're opinionated. And certainly as societies, we're allowing ourselves to indulge in that a lot more, which is kind of disturbing to me at any rate, that people are so willing to criticize and judge other people and sort of jump on the bandwagon without knowing what's actually going on and just go regurgitate hate and disinformation and so forth. And it's disheartening that that's happening. But that's because people aren't like being with themselves. They're so busy being outside of themselves in other things and unfocusing from the important things like what's their life like? Who are they really? Are the people that they're with happy with who they are? Are they happy with who they are? Is their living situation healthy, emotionally balanced? Are they spending all of their time yelling at others that aren't even there? Or are they working on who they are? I think we'd get a lot farther a lot quicker if we were more inwardly focused when it came to, working on yourself versus trying to beat the world into submission with our will, make it do what we want. And back to the whole will thing, and yeah, the fighting between people's wills, which are the small will. They're like the unimportant things. They're not the important things. Anyway, you shouldn't be able to do something that's against your true will, because that would be against your essence, your nature, against the reality of who you are as a spirit, as a person, um, as a being conscious of itself. And if you try to do things that are against your true will, that's when a lot of mess happens. It's a fine line like everything else. It's not straightforward and like here's this and there's that, and you can tell easily the differences between them. There's a lot of nuance in there, and it's all about exploration and willingness to self-reflect. But the balance between the things is the important part, because you're not serving your true will if you're beating yourself up all the time and cataloging your failings of what you're not able to do. You're not serving your true will if you're pumping yourself up all the time and ignoring your failings. and that, trying to focus on just all the positive stuff and that you're perfect and wonderful, and there's nothing you need to learn. It's like, yeah, together, the two halves together. I think that's one of the reasons why people talk more and more about shadow work, the idea of that, because if you don't know what parts of you are trying to fight your will, your true will, and incorporate them into you, then there's nothing you can do. I mean, you really can't succeed in the ways that matter. And that's the other thing, is what are the things that matter? What actually matters about being alive? I mean, we need to have food to survive, food and water. We need shelter to be safe. We like friends to feel comfort, and share with other people. But, the right friends. But beyond that, what do we really need? Except for, self reflection and developing our own unique selves, figuring out what's important. Like, most spell work is focused on getting something done. Not that I think there's anything wrong with getting things done, but it's not the only part of magic. Spell work is a small piece of the whole puzzle, or, the pie, or this piece of pie. I don't know, it's sort of a pie and a puzzle. and it helps us to develop a way of communicating more directly with the universe, I think, through spell work. But when we're too focused on the goal and we've defined the goal too much, then we miss all the potential that's happening around us. It's kind of like, again, you've got, I'm going to be this, and you've defined it. All those storyboards and wish boards and things like that, with that, was the system that they're calling it now, in order to get whatever you want. And, cutting out pictures and sticking them up may help to kind of, in general, lead you in a direction. But if your expectations are that exactly what you imagine is exactly what you're going to get, if you actually get exactly what you imagine, you'll probably find yourself disappointed, because it won't have all of you in it. It'll just have like this notion, this idea, like becoming the head of a company, or becoming the wealthiest person on the planet, or becoming the king, or, being in charge of other people's lives and deaths. It's like, really, in the end, that doesn't matter at all. um, and in the process of being too focused, single-minded on a result, then when the universe goes, well, okay, that's not a bad idea, but it would be better if we leaned it in that direction, which would be more along your true will, and then you ignore it because you're too focused on that specific goal. It's one of those problems that we all have. Like, how are we going to get what we want or what we need? And there's just that whole balancing between letting the universe figure it out for us and us helping the universe get it done. It's like, not just one thing, it's always lots of things. Complicated. So, I know that we think that I'm not the only one that thinks about these things. At least I'm hoping. I'm pretty confident I'm not. I know at least a couple people that think along the same lines as I do. So I'm not completely alone. But there's no like single answer. That's the thing. It's like the universe is unique and different for each one of us, and we each have to find our own way through it. But if we can connect with our true will and our true nature, then it's easier for us to follow it. And you don't have to necessarily know the exact exit, like what is the final result of all of this. It doesn't have to have like a tally of some kind, like this many followers on Facebook, or these many people that think I'm cool, or whatever, this much money, these many cars. All of those things are ephemeral anyway, and don't go with us when we move on to the next stage of our spiritual development, as we transition from our body into the spirit world. And of course, if I'm wrong about that, it won't matter, because then I'll go over there and go like, oh, I was wrong. Okay. Um, but it's something for me to work with and to look at. And becoming an independent individual is not easy, but your true will can help you get there, and figuring out what that means. It's definitely a feeling. When I started going into therapy, one of the things that they recommended that we do in the incest survivors group was to try and find a picture of ourselves from before the abuse happened, which I thought was brilliant. What a brilliant idea. Whoever came up with that, kudos. And I found that picture that I've posted a couple of times of me as a child. And that showed me my true nature when I came into this body and into this world. So, sort of gave me a roadmap, I guess. A notion, an idea of who I really was. Before the people did the things. And that has definitely helped me to focus on my goal, which is to be that wondrous, joyful, delighted. So I'm always surprised when I go places like that. They come up, wow, okay. Anyway, but our true nature and our true will is not the ideas that we have, it's the core of who we are, and that's the feelings, and that's the ability to encounter and experience the universe. Whatever job we have, whatever personal things and struggles we're going through, it's that connection with, that direct interaction with the universe, is that is who we are, and that's what makes us who we are, and that's why each one of us is special. So if you're having difficulty trying to figure out what the heck you're supposed to be doing, go back to basics and think about what you need in reality. If you can't take care of your basic needs, you're going to have a hard time with all the other stuff. Who is important to you? And what is important to you, as far as the people around you and the things around you, the life around you, all that stuff. Because it's in that, those relationships and the dynamics that you develop with those parts of the universe that are close to you that will help you find your true will. And it's not a battering ram. Willpower can sometimes be experienced when you're trying to get something done as a battering ram, but it's not. It's quiet. True will is very quiet and immersive and connected, and it gives you real power to get through the stuff that happens. It's that connection to all that you are, all that you've been, and all that you're going to be is where true will resides. And so it's kind of like a deep quiet and a centeredness and a knowingness and an acceptance of where everything is and what everything is, and then the vision of how to get through it to the other side, how to travel along the pathways. So be nice to yourself. None of us know everything. Forgive yourself. None of us are perfect. Work on yourself. All of us need to be worked on. We all need to work on ourselves. You can always be better than you are. But give yourself a break. And it's okay to relax and just experience joy and quiet and love. It doesn't have to be like constantly in motion. You can find your true will in the silences easier, I think, than you can in the actions. So hopefully this made sense. I never know when I start these things. Looking forward to your thoughts. I like to have questions. It helps me to focus my experiences that might be useful for other people to hear and give them ideas for the things that they can do for themselves. So certainly feel free to send me questions. You can send me email at siofrasmagicalcove@gmail.com, and certainly you can put comments on the videos. So till I see you guys again, this is Siofra Bradigan, and this is Siofra's Magic Alcove. Blessed be.